would say right now is the best Destiny 2 Sandbox has ever been. Like when you take into account how bad Stasis was last year, or even if you reach back even further, when we had issues like One-Eye Mask, Prometheus Lens, Lord of Wolves, Viking Funeral Warlock meta, Clever Dragon. Guys, one day we're gonna make a video and just take a trip down meta lane, right? And just go over what was the nastiest meta. And I will give you my personal opinion and rankings for all the previous metas, because we've seen a lot of them. However, right now, we are in a much more balanced state than ever before, especially in regards to our abilities. But we need to talk about 4 exotics. 4 exotics that really are major outliers in this sandbox. Now, I know right now, you're upset. You're like, yo, Cross, why are you making this video? You're gonna get these weapons nerfed? And all I'm gonna say is that I am but a humble guardian talking about some weapons that are just slightly nastier than nasty. And I feel like there's no better weapon to start with than, of course, the last word. This weapon has changed so much from D1 to D2. Part of the reason why I went from console to PC was just to play with the last word. And that was because when it first got brought to us in Destiny 2, it wasn't good on controller. It was terrible, but it was fantastic on mouse and keyboard, and everyone was aiming down sights with it. But since then, Bungie has actually leaned into the identity of this hand cannon, making it a hip-fire machine. And a lot of people actually make jokes about last word being the best machine gun, but it actually is, as it can straight up chopper gunner down any machine gun in the game. It has a time to kill value of 0.53 seconds due to the fact that it shoots at 225 rounds per minute, and it also does 68 damage per crit. The caveat, you have to fire from the hip. This is somewhat of a difficult task depending on your input. Now, there has been multiple, and I mean multiple buffs given out to last word to make it a more approachable weapon on mouse and keyboard. And there are some users out there that are still able to use last word effectively on mouse and keyboard. Hip fire grip especially has received multiple buffs, all of which is benefiting the last word here. The issue, as it was even a few sandboxes ago, is that every single one of these buffs that have been handed out to last word to make it more usable for mouse and keyboard users has substantially buffed it for my controller players. Guys, this is all controller gameplay, and it probably looks like I'm a god, but this ain't me, man. This is the power of aim assist. And even though the last word only has 40 aim assists, that's all it needs, because it goes balls deep on everything, especially on the right map. Pretty much anything less than 22 meters will die to the last word. And with fanfire, every hip fire shot also increases accuracy. Look, I know we were streaming this the other day. We were showing last word gameplay, but it was hard for people coming into the stream to dispute how nasty this weapon is on controller. And listen, I'm not a controller player. I did play controller. I do occasionally pick up controller, but I am not a controller player. I would consider myself mid-tier. The issue with last word is it doesn't care. Mid-tier, amateur, never picked up a controller in your life? Hey man, don't worry about it. Last word will shred everything you look at. Now, is this weapon fun to use? You're damn right. My God. Like, you really understand Thanos when he obtained the power of all the Infinity Stones. That's how it feels when you're rocking things like last word, inertia override, and one-eye mask. And if you want to get even nastier, last word and lucky pants. Jesus. This is one of the weapons that really, if I go up against inside of trials, I run the other way. I hear a last word go off and I immediately say to myself, Cross, there is no way you're going to win this 1v1. Retreat now. When there is an exotic in the game that can demand that much fear, you know it's good. Now, the issue that last word faces is, of course, the fact that if Bungie nerfs it, even slightly, it gets nerfed on mouse and keyboard. So how do we fix such a weapon? Well, you have to individually tune it based on its inputs. You just have to. Bungie has shown they've been able to do that here recently, but there is some slight overlap. Is last word completely destroying the Crucible? No. But is it an outlier? Yeah, it's an outlier for sure. The next weapon on the list needs no introduction. It may actually be just as annoying as the last word, and that is, of course, Dead Man's Tale. Now listen, guys, I love DMT. It's my favorite. This weapon can be a close range eat 'em up or a long range two-tapper. It's a scout rifle that's essentially like last word in a lot of ways, and rightfully so. It's Tex Mechanica, and they make the best weapons. But I think what makes DMT so good, it's really its exotic catalyst, right? It increases that rate of fire from 120 to 150, and with the most recent sandbox changes, Dead Man's Tale actually got a buff even for mouse and keyboard users, as it now has even better hit registration than what it did before. Now, granted, not as good as when it first launched, but somewhere in the middle. Now, similar to Hawkmoon, DMT actually gets deadlier with every precision hit. The cranial spike, especially if you're pairing it with things like high energy fire, inertia override, Sun Warrior, all these things can easily allow Dead Man's Tale to run around and two-tap. And even though this weapon starts with a base time to kill of 1 second, shooting at 120 rounds per minute, that quickly drops down to 0.8 seconds with a two-tap potential of reaching that time to kill value value of 0.4 seconds. What makes Dead Man's Tale good though is just the sheer amount of damage that it puts out even before Cranium. That 81 damage per crit is disgusting. It hits hard, fast, and with you able to shoot from the hip, it allows you to max strafe, and for mouse and keyboard users, lining that reticle up from the hip is no problem. But honestly, I'm gonna bring up something about Dead Man's Tale that I believe is actually the most annoying aspect about this weapon when receiving damage from it. And to me, that's its damage glitch. Some weapons in the game, whether it's latency, whether it's Bungie servers, or the guns themselves, some weapons tend to hit double damage more often than others. DMT seems to run into that issue a lot. Even if this gameplay right here doesn't necessarily reflect that, I've had multiple scenarios in where I'm shooting where there seems to be no damage being done, and then all of a sudden my opponent dies. This is very hard if you're on the receiving end of Dead Man's Tale, because you're paying attention to your health, and in your mind you're thinking you're good, and then all of a sudden you die. Not only that, Dead Man's Tale, because it can roll random rolls, it takes flinch to a whole nother level if you roll it with things like high caliber rounds, which it most definitely comes with. On top of that, when we talk about weapons that are the best for shutting down supers, in the past people would pull out a sniper rifle. Take something like Revoker for instance. I would argue and say Dead Man's Tale is single-handedly the best weapon for taking down roaming supers. Vorpal is such a good perk, and it deals so much damage against guardians with their supers, which in many situations, especially in trials, when we get into those later rounds and I know the other team is about to pop their super, I just break out Dead Man's Tale and back up and literally chew them in half. This is a fantastic exotic, and similar to Last Word, Bungie has leaned into its identity a lot, which is what I don't want to ruin. I don't want to take away from that, but to say it's not an outlier would be a lie, because it most definitely is. But similar to Last Word, it is walking this tightrope between being a very good weapon on mouse and keyboard and a decent weapon on controller. Again, this is going to fall back on Bungie balancing this weapon in a way that allows it to be decent on both ends. I do know that when I play on controller, I do find myself aiming down sights more with Dead Man's Tale, using it more as a scout rifle at range. Whereas on mouse and keyboard, you don't have to do that. Matter of fact, you don't have to ever aim down sights if you don't want to. You can literally shoot from the hip and still maintain contact at crazy ranges. Now, I know it seems like we're picking on these primary weapons, which we are, which is why we're going to shift lanes real quick and look at a weapon that has been raining terror on console players. Guys, let's take a look at the linear fusion rifle, Lorentz Driver. Now, realistically, I love the theme of this weapon. I love that it practically talks to you in its own way. It's got like a built-in R2-D2. It's got a dope ornament. The weapon is also really good in both PvE and in PvP, especially this season. Its exotic perk marks targets similar to like One Eye Mass, and it was definitely way more busted at launch. But when you kill those marked targets, they actually drop a telemetry pattern, and picking up those 3 telemetry patterns increases that weapon damage. Now, that weapon damage absolutely wrecks inside of Crucible. On top of that, with every precision final blow, there's this implosion pool that makes vortex grenades look weak. That also has an additional detonation. And then, if you get the exotic catalyst and you collect those 3 telemetry patterns, those detonations no longer require precision final blows. Now, here's the thing. That all sounds nasty, but that's not the problem. At the end of the day, you still have to collect 3 telemetry patterns on 3 separate marked targets, which is quite a task. And despite the exotic catalyst being very good there, and that all sounds busted, that's not what makes Lorentz Driver an outlier. What makes it an outlier is the fact that this weapon has redonkulous hit registration for both mouse and keyboard users and controller. Now, I don't think you see it as often on PC, because on PC, people are moving a little faster and people can flick faster with a sniper rifle, so it can counter Lorentz. But on console, Lorentz is a problem, fellas. It's a major problem. And I noticed it too when I plugged in my controller. There were multiple times that someone was unloading in my face. And when someone is sitting there blowing their load in my face and I can still land a crit on them, that's a problem. There is no way I should still be able to land a crit on them with that much action happening. And that's the problem with Lorentz Driver. And that seems to carry over to a lot of linear fusion rifles. Arbalest was starting to become a problem as well. But Lorentz takes it a step further. Even though Arbalest was annoying, I don't think it was nearly as bad as what Lorentz Driver is. And once you get Lorentz rolling, it just gets nastier and nastier. Now, I love how good this weapon is, but we have to understand it is an outlier because its base default hit registration is just too good. And maybe this is an intrinsic problem with all linear fusion rifles, and special linears are the ones that are the most noticed because of their availability. And we know that Bungie's talked about nerfing special ammo in the future, so maybe that's why they're not addressing Lorentz Lorentz as of now. Because in their mind, they're just like, yo, Lorentz is going to be taken care of along with a lot of other special weapons because voila, we're going to deal with special ammo, which by the way, does concern me. I definitely don't want to return back to year 3 of Destiny 1. Either way it goes, Lorentz is a problem because there's just hardly no way to counter it, even if you do everything right. You come around the corner, you unload 2 beautiful crits into that Guardian, and he somehow still manages to land a crit shot on you with Lorentz Driver. That's a problem. And similar to like Last Word, you run into a situation where the only way to deal with Lorentz Driver is to have a friend. What sucks? It's his AoE explosion counters the power of friendship. So it's pretty much a lose-lose here, right? Regardless, whether it's an intrinsic problem for all linears, all I can say as of now is that Lorentz Driver is an issue. Now, the final weapon on this list that I hate to throw under the bus here, because I love the Chaperone. I love the way this weapon backs up other shotgun users. I like that it rewards precision. What I don't like is that the term precision, when we talk about Chaperone, is very forgiving. As in precision is practically the whole Guardian, right? Especially when you got things like Roadborne active. When that perk is active, it feels like everything is a crit on the Guardian you're shooting at. Now, Chaperone has had a lot of things happen on the macro level that has made it the go-to shotgun option. Shotguns in general got a range nerf. Chaperone 2 did get a range nerf, but less so than other shotguns. On top of that, it has the furthest reach amongst all slug shotguns by default. Even the godliest rolled legendary shotgun out there cannot match that of Chaperone, and that is even before Roadborne is active. Those weapons are capped. Chaperone's not. At least not capped at the same level that they're capped. That's partly due to the fact that this weapon has 100 range. But I think a couple things that make Chaperone so good is the fact that Roadborne turns this weapon into an absolute monster with that bump in range, and I think its overall target acquisition is increased. Now, of course, when we talk about shotguns, target acquisition is tied to range, and a lot of other weapons at that, but Chaperone turns it up another level. So much so that it strikes fear in anyone, especially when they get Roadborne active. Like the moment I hear Chaperone go off and they get a precision kill, I back up and I wait. I wait for that perk to go away, because there is no way in hell I am going to be able to beat Chaperone at that point. Now, similar to some of these other weapons, especially Lorentz, Chaperone is good on both mouse and keyboard and controller. I was swapping between both of these and I was impressed with how well Chaperone still performed on controller. I thought it was going to be a problem lining up shots, but no, Chaperone has fantastic target acquisition, probably due to the fact of having 70 aim assists. The weapon also has superb handling, whereas a lot of other slug shotguns, you have to load it out with something to buff that handling, right? Like back in the day, I always wanted my slug shotguns to have quick draw. Of course, quick draw got nerfed, still good perk for the swap out, or at least for the initial handling, but not what it was. Which again, there's been a multitude of things that has occurred over time that has led Chaperone to be where it is today. Is duality as annoying as Chaperone? Actually, no, because it doesn't have as much range as Chaperone. Bungie's counter to this is that, hey, Chaperone requires a precision shot, whereas duality up close can be used as a regular shotgun when firing from the hip. But what I notice about Chaperone, to me, that makes it super deadly is really its rate of fire. Its rate of fire is just so fast for the amount of range that it can kill you at. If that rate of fire was slowed down substantially, the follow-up shot would be harder, giving it more time to be countered. But similar to weapons like Lorentz Driver, there are just times that you're shooting a Chaperone user right in the face and they still land a crit. Now, are we going to deal with Lorentz Driver and Chaperone in the same way by nerfing special ammo? Again, maybe that's what Bungie is preparing to do. Either way it goes, guys, do I love these weapons? Yes. I love every single one of these. Very much so. Are they outliers though? Absolutely. Are they Tex Mechanica weapons? You're dang right they are. Does Tex Mechanica make some fantastic weapons? Obviously they do. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, Bungie, you should tune or nerf some of these Tex Mechanica weapons, when in fact, these weapons embody their identity so well. But as of now, before Witch Queen, these guns are definitely outliers. Let me know in the comments below what you think. By the way, if you're new here, hey man, stick around, hit the subscribe button. We talk about everything Destiny related. We also have a clip channel if you just want to watch stupid stuff, and an anime channel, which is coming out soon. That's right, we're going to be making anime content. I know some of you are like, whoa, Cross, you're a weeb, what? I've always had a thing for thick anime women. It's why we played Genshin, or Genshin. Either way it goes, hitting the subscribe button will put you front and center with this madness. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.